Good evening. Tonight, two of the most isolated governments on Earth have found in each other exactly what each one lacks. Russia is fighting a long war and running short of the one thing no factory can print: working hands. North Korea has hands to spare and almost nothing else the world will pay for. So they made a bargain, and like most bargains struck between men in warm rooms, the bill has been quietly handed to people who were never asked. I'm Marty, and this is the story of a partnership built on desperation. Let us begin. Story 1. The whole arrangement can be told in a single line. Russia needs bodies, and North Korea needs cash. That is the deal, stripped of the flags and the handshakes and the language about ancient friendship. Two states, each walled off from most of the world, each holding the one thing the other is missing. Russia has money and a hunger for manpower it can no longer satisfy at home. North Korea has people and a desperate hunger for money it cannot earn honestly anywhere else. When two governments are that isolated, they stop being choosy about the company they keep. They become, in a way, the only friend each other has left. And human dignity, you will notice, was not invited to the meeting where any of this got decided. Story 2. Consider what Russia gets out of it, because that is the engine of the whole thing. A long war does something to a country's labor force that is easy to overlook. Men who once poured concrete and framed buildings are sent to the front, and many do not come back to the job site. The workshops and the construction firms are left short-handed at the very moment the state most wants things built. Into that gap comes North Korean labor, cheap, disciplined, and above all controllable, because these are workers who cannot quit, cannot complain, and cannot leave. And beyond the labor, Russia reportedly receives artillery shells, missiles, and, according to multiple governments, North Korean soldiers sent to fight and, in some accounts, to die on Russia's behalf. It is a supply line of human beings running in more than one direction. Story 3. Now turn the arrangement around and look at what North Korea takes home. For a government that has been squeezed by international sanctions for decades, the answer is simple. And it is everything: hard currency. Real money, the kind that can buy food for a country that has known famine, and technology it is otherwise forbidden to obtain, and a measure of breathing room from the very sanctions meant to strangle it. When your citizens are sent abroad to labor, the wages do not flow to them. They flow in large part back to the state that sent them. So the worker becomes an export, and the paycheck becomes the product. For a regime with little else to sell the world, its own people have become the most reliable commodity it has. Story 4. Here is where you have to admire, in the way you admire a well-picked lock, how the labor actually keeps flowing. Back in 2017, the United Nations passed Resolution 2397, which was supposed to end this trade in workers and send them all home by the close of 2019. On paper, it worked. In practice, it did what most paper does when two determined governments would rather it didn't. The workers kept coming, only now they arrived wearing different labels. They came as students on educational visas. They came as trainees, as interns, as contractors, as anything but what they plainly were. A man laying brick on a Russian building site was reclassified, with a straight face, into a category the resolution did not cover. The trade did not stop. It simply learned to fill out different forms. Story 5. And now we come to the part where the sarcasm has to stop, because this is where the real cost is paid, and it is not paid by any government. Consider what these workers actually endure inside this alliance. On arrival, many have their passports taken and held so that leaving is no longer a choice they get to make. They are watched housing, movement, and contact with the outside world kept under close and constant surveillance. The wages that were the whole point of sending them are confiscated, skimmed away before a man ever sees what his labor earned. And to make certain no one runs, the regime keeps the surest lock of all, the worker's family back home, held as the quiet guarantee of his obedience. These are not employees. They are hostages who are also required to work. Story 6. You might reasonably ask why this is so easy for two governments to arrange and so hard for anyone else to stop. The convenience is the whole point. For Russia, it is deniable. A student visa here, a contractor there. Nothing that looks from a distance like a violation. For North Korea, it is the closest thing to a functioning economy it has, and it is not about to give that up because a resolution asked politely. And for the rest of the world, the honest answer is that stopping it is genuinely difficult. You cannot easily inspect a closed country's building sites. You cannot interview a frightened man whose family is a hostage to his silence. Sanctions can be written, but they must be enforced by nations with borders and interests of their own, and enforcement is slow, partial, and easily dodged. Two governments that agree to lie in the same direction are remarkably hard to catch. Story 7. So here is the verdict, and it is a plain one. Russia needed bodies, and it found them. North Korea needed cash, and it got it. Both governments walked away from the table with precisely the thing they came for, and by their own cold arithmetic, the partnership is a success. But run your eye down the length of that deal, past the flags and the shells and the confiscated wages, and you will notice the one party who was never consulted and never paid, the worker himself. Nobody at that table, on either side with any power to change it, stopped for even a moment to ask what he needed. That is not an oversight. That is the design. When the powerful trade in the powerless, the arrangement works beautifully for everyone except the person it is made of. Guard your compassion for the man whose name never appears in the treaty. I'm Marty. Good night.